Hey everybody, Alex from SCADA Forge here. In this video, we're going to talk about templates in the Vision module. Basically, templates are a way to build a template or a view or a window that we can use to look at things that are like similar pieces of equipment that follow the same data structure, where we only have to build the graphical side of things once. And we can use indirect tag bindings to map to a different instance of that object. And we basically place the template on the screen, and we can use something like a drop down or a tab strip or radio buttons to select which device we're looking at. We can also use pop-ups. Say we want to have an overview screen that has a handful of pieces of equipment on it, and we want to be able to click on those and pop up a detailed view. We can create a single pop-up with a single template instance and pass some parameters in to the pop-up in the template to see what we want to see. So in this case, we'll take a look at our simulated tags that we pulled in the device video, and we'll create a simple template for the tower object. Now, this has a handful of tags contained within it, including some pumps. We'll take a handful of these tags to create our template just to show how it works, but we won't necessarily build a full template in this section. So I created a folder here under templates below Vision for Ignition 102 templates. In Vision, your windows exist under the Windows folder or the Windows menu item, and then templates exist under your templates menu item because they operate differently than Windows. In Perspective, you don't have that separation, so you just have to create views. Typically, I'll create a templates folder that holds what I'm using as templates in the Perspective side. I'll cover that in the Perspective video. So you can either right-click on templates if you want to just put it in the root. In this case, we'll do a new template on that folder, and we'll call it Tower, and hit Create Template. And that opens up the template editor, and you'll see the icon here is slightly different on the bottom. It's like a couple squares with some arrows compared to the window icon that you'll see here. So that'll give you some visual indication in the designer here what you're looking at. So we'll close that out. And templates also automatically have this checkerboard pattern on the back instead of just a plain color like the root container does in a window. So that's also another easy way to visualize what you're doing. So the main thing we need to do with templates is create some custom properties or template parameters on that. So we can go here into custom properties. We'll have internal properties. Those are things that we can do internal to the template based on values defined in there if we want. Template parameters up top are things that are passed into the template. So if we want to, in this case, we're going to create a tower number template parameter, and we're going to use that to build our tag paths. That will allow us to set that up as a binding when we set this up in a window, whether that's in a normal window and we just create a template instance or we put it in a pop-up. So we're going to come up here to template parameters, and we'll call it tower num. That will be an integer data type, and that's really all that we're going to build for this. You may need to get more complex. Maybe you're passing in different folder structures or things in your tag path. But basically what this is going to do, I hit OK so I can scroll, is in our tag path, we're going to map to the simulated data folder, to the refrigeration folder, and then to the tower folder. And we're going to pass in that template parameter as part of our tag path here where we have 1 or 2 for tower 1 and tower 2. And that will then map all the tags correctly in here. So let's take some of the tags here. Let's see, we have pH, temperature, and MMOH. We'll throw those on our template here to give us a starting point. So MMOH, pH, and temp. The first thing that we want to do, since this is a template that we may not exactly know what we're looking at, is we'll throw a label on there as sort of a title. We'll go to rename that to something useful, and we'll make it a little bit bigger. Hit OK. And we'll just make that the full width of the template and set it to be center aligned horizontally. So it shows up in the middle. And just make it a little bigger up top. Now this will be our first example of a more dynamic tag path that we've done on the videos so far. So we're going to, because this is a label, we want to change our text property. So we'll go to our text property binding. In this case, we're going to just use the parameter of tower num from our template. So we'll basically build an expression that includes that. So we'll build a string that is tower with a space, and then we want to combine this with our tower num property. So you basically click the property selection button. That will bring up your template, and the blue items are the custom properties or the template parameters, and that's the same across the board if you're doing custom properties on components or windows or anything. So we'll select that and we'll hit OK. And then that comes in with the curly braces, and that will give us a text string on the label that says tower with a space and plus whatever the value of tower num is, which in this case is 0 because it doesn't have any other value yet. So let's say we want to make that 1, so we can map this by default to tower 1. We'll change that here by selecting the template itself, and down at the bottom we see template parameters. Tower num, we'll make that a 1, and that updates our label text here. So now let's say we want to do temperature first. So just to show some more components, we have a thermometer graphic. We can click and drag that over to the template. We can make this a little bit smaller. And we'll just leave it here roughly in the middle. And we'll center it vertically. Now if we look at this components properties, we have a value and an overall low bound and an overall high bound. We don't specifically know what those are from the simulated data. It looks like we're hovering around 100, so maybe we'll make our lower bound 50 and our upper bound 150, and that'll update our graphic here of the thermometer. This also gives us units. Let's assume we're in Fahrenheit. That'll change the units icon up here on the thermometer. We have thermometer color. These are all things that we could bind to based on the value if we want to, say, show red when it's getting hot, or yellow when it's not quite as hot, or green when it's in normal condition. Down here we have the intervals, so we can look at that. Let's say our normal range is 0 to 90. Our middle range is 90 to 110. And then our red would be 110 to 150. So we can populate those. Right now our value is 0 by default. What we're going to do here is we are going to bind this value to our tag path. So we'll click the binding edit button. Now if we were to do a tag binding, simulated data, refrigeration, tower 1, temp. If we do that, that's going to be tied to this tower 1 tag for everything that we do. So no matter what else we put on this template, anytime you open it up, it's going to look at the tower 1 temp tag, which is fine if you're on a window and you're just adding a specific component, but doesn't match what we're trying to do with templates. So the easiest way to manage that is with an indirect tag binding. Now what this allows us to do is put in a tag path, and then by putting in a curly brace with a number, in this case we just start with 1, that gives us a reference that we can use and a property path that we can map to. So what this allows us to do is anywhere in here where we have this curly bracket 1, close curly bracket, when we go into play mode or we're just looking at the template here in design mode, it will replace that with the property path that we have mapped here. In this case, we want that to be mapped to tower num. Since tower num is set to 1 on our template right now, it's going to replace this curly brace with a 1 in the middle with the number 1. So we can hit OK, and we don't see any change here because that's still mapped to the same path. And let's just show those tags here in the browser. So we see, tower 1 temp is 101 and fluctuating, and tower 2 temp is fluctuating at a different rate there. So to show how that works in a template, we can select the template by clicking on it. We can change this to tower 2. And now we're looking at tower 2's value. So that's how our bindings work on templates. Okay, let's grab, we also want to look at our pH. For that, let's move to a moving analog indicator. We'll throw this in the middle of the screen. pH, that doesn't actually match pH values. That's okay. It's fake data at the moment. So let's make this 150 as the high and 150 as or 0 as the low. This also gives us properties for set point values, desired values, and things, which will control what we're seeing here on the graphic. The desired value would be what's in blue. Let's say make the desired high 110, the desired low 90. Low alarm, let's make that, 80. A low alarm could be 60. A high alarm can be 120. And a high alarm could be 140. So that will give us some additional graphical options here that kind of shows if we're in a low alarm, if we're in normal range, if we're in our desired value, and the little triangle here will move according to what we're looking at there. Right now we're in low alarm because our value is, this process value parameter is 50 by default, so it's highlighting that in red. If we were to change that to 100, we go out of the alarm mode, so it's showing those are inactive and we're within our desired range. So again, similar to the thermometer, we're going to open up the tag binding. We could easily do an indirect tag here. Another way we can do this is we can do an expression and effectively do the same thing as we're doing with an indirect tag. So what I'll do first is I'll just grab the tag path here, go refrigeration, tower 1, pH, okay. That'll bring in the tag path, and if we were to simply hit OK, this will start to match what we're seeing on that pH tag there. To make this more dynamic, we can get rid of the curly braces. We can put in a tag function and build a string of our tag path here. Very similar to what we did on the indirect binding, except instead of mapping that reference property, we're going to just pull in our tower number property here. And that comes across just like that, just like we saw in the label with the curly braces. Same exact approach. We're just wrapping that within a tag function here. And that will allow this expression to grab the value of the tag and map it to our process variable property. So we hit OK. We see that that updates. And if we were to go to Tower 2, then we see now we're using Tower 2's data. And let's say for MMOH, we're going to just use a numeric label. We'll center that. Maybe we'll space all of these horizontally with 25 pixels between them. And align center, vertical, middle. Just using the buttons to kind of align that how it looks decent. And in this case, we'll basically do the same thing. Maybe we want to add units to this so that it displays what the units are. We'll make this a little bit bigger. And we'll make the font size a little bigger. Make that a little bit smaller. Recenter it. And similar to the components video, we'll bind to the value property. And instead of copying and pasting it like before, we'll just navigate refrigeration, tower 1, MMOH. Then for an indirect tag to work how we want, we need to do the curly brace. And we won't add one here, but if we wanted to, say, add additional parameters, maybe we're in a production line with equipment numbers and line numbers or something, you can have multiple references here that will allow you to build a complex indirect tag path. And we'll map to tower number and we'll hit OK. So there's our template. If we want to show how this works with a window, we will we'll hit save, so our template's saved. We will just create a template examples folder. And we'll create a new main window. We'll call it towers. Now here we have our window, root container, and so on. Effectively, our template now becomes a component. Oops. Let's close that so we could drag and drop it. Our template effectively becomes a component we can drag and drop from our project browser onto our window here. So let's just make that a little bit smaller. And we'll just copy and paste that since we only have two templates. And we'll just center those on the window. So now you'll see these both show tower 2. To fix that, we can just come here. And this is an instance of a template. And you'll see here, this has the stamp icon. So you know that's an instance of a template, not a standard component. If we click on that, we see the properties for each of these. In this case, they both have tower num set to 2. Let's click this first one, make tower num equal to 1. And now we have templates set up on the screen. I'll get into it in future videos. There's also a, let me search for it. template repeater and template canvas. So let's say we had 16 towers. Instead of creating 16 template instances on the screen, we could use the template repeater to create a grid of those pretty easily and pass in all the parameters and things to each instance. We can also use a template canvas that gives us some flexibility in terms of where things are located if we want to make a more dynamic template layout than just a grid or something. And then if we want to take this and do a pop-up window, we'll call this tower detail. And we'll hit create window. This will create a pop-up window. Again, we will simply drag our tower template over to here. We'll put it in the middle. Now this is one additional layer of complexity, but we can use navigation events to open this pop-up, say from a button press. We can pass in parameters to the pop-up, and then we can bind those parameters to template instances. So we will go to customizers, custom properties. We will make this custom property called TowerNum again on the pop-up window itself. We'll give that a value of 1. Then we'll go to our template instance, and instead of binding this to a hard-coded value like we did on the window, on the main window, we will go to a property binding here. We'll look on our root container, find the blue TowerNum property that we just added, and we'll hit OK. And now that gives us the ability to pass from the pop-up window into the template instance. Now to show how that works, we'll just come back to the window and we will just grab a button, buttons. Let's put a button here. We'll call the text on here Tower 1. Then we'll go into scripting, hitting Control J, action perform. Now we want to do a navigation action, so we'll hit open and swap. In this case, we want to select our window first. We want template examples tower detail. We're just going to open and center. We don't need to close this window because this is a pop-up that we're opening, so it'll open in front of it. And we can pass parameters by checking that box. And we can click the plus button to add a parameter that we want to add, and it will automatically pull in the parameters from our pop-up window. So we select TowerNum, and we can hit 1, because that's what we want that value to be when we open the pop-up there. So we'll hit OK. We will copy paste the button. Let's make these aligned. Let's make these aligned, and let's align these. Then we'll come to the second button and call that Tower 2, and then we'll go to our scripting. You can double click on the button. You can hit Control or Command J depending on your operating system, or right click and edit scripting. And we're going to just change our parameter value that we're passing in to 2. So now I'll just stay in the designer here to show how this works. So if I click the button, I didn't hit enter when I renamed this to Tower 2. We'll click this button and it will open up our tower detail of Tower 2. And we'll just close that for now. Tower 1. This opens up Tower 1. So that is how you do templates and parameterized pop-up windows in Vision. And that gives you an immense amount of flexibility across your entire project to build pretty complex interfaces as needed from there. If for some reason you wanted to have a tower pop up with a tab strip on top, we can do some scripting based on the selected tab value. Either maybe we're using expression bindings instead of indirect bindings on our instance, and we can set our tower num parameter based on our selected tab. If you wanted to have a left and right button here to click through, kind of like a carousel, you could add something like that, so that like tower 1, if you click on the right, goes to tower 2, and then maybe you can go back to tower 1 or go on to tower 3 if that exists. But that gives you a ton of flexibility in your Vision projects. So thank you for watching.